just can't get to America. For me, anyway. You know. Oh, okay. Matthew chapter 2, and we're going to start out tonight in verse number 7. And then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star had appeared. Okay, remember, this is when old Herod, the old ugly king, he's inquiring about the wise men to where is the birth of this new king that they talked about. It's entirely possible that since these wise men traveled by camel, y'all got to remember they traveled by camel, and y'all got to remember that the Bible does not reflect your Christmas card, okay? Y'all have to really understand that. That possibly it could have been maybe a year or so, maybe a little longer before these wise men coming from where they came from got to Bethlehem, okay? So it's not an overnight Christmas miracle like you see on the card. The wise men and the shepherds did not show up the same time to the birth of Jesus. It talked about the shepherds were in fields nearby, but the wise men came from far away. But they did show up, okay? So they did get that part right. But the thing about Herod is Herod was deeply stirred. And when I say he was stirred, I mean he was bothered. He was bothered really, really bad. Because if y'all remember, I talked before about Herod, and the only reason Herod was a king is because Herod paid for his kingship. He paid for his royalty, okay? He didn't have no right to be there. He just had more money and bought off the robe, bought Rome off, all right? So Herod wants to find out where this baby is because he's really, really bothered because they called him, quote unquote, a king. So Herod didn't like that, so he sets the wise men out to go to Bethlehem, to kind of be on the lookout for it. So, verse number 8. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also. So here he is. He's being about as subtle as an old serpent, He's being subtle as a snake in the grass is what he's being, His plan was simply this, to do away with any threat to his position. He wanted to find baby Jesus and kill him, plain and simple. That's what he was looking to do. He was trying to send the wise men. He was trying to send them out as his unknown spies. He was trying to, use those guys. Yeah, go out and find him. When you find him, come back and tell old Herod, I just want to go and worship the guy, So y'all come back by here and tell me, So all of him, it's all a ploy for him. It's just baloney that he's feeding these guys. His true move, again, he wanted to do away with the baby Jesus. So let's look at verse 9 and verse 10. And when they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them until it came and stood over where the young child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. Now, when it talks about the star showed and when they saw the star, some of these guys want to talk about the star had gone away and it came back. I don't know about that. But look, I want to tell you about these wise men here. Is whatever the star was doing, they knew it. They knew that the star was not a normal star. The star, this one was very special, and it was, I reckon you could just call it was a supernatural, a miraculous star. It was different. Like even the light that shined from it was different. Now these wise men, they were wise men, they were soothsayers, they were whatever you want to call them, magicians, whatever. I'm sure there were some astronomers in their group because it wasn't just three guys. They had a complete entourage of people, that they were traveling with because they always did. Nobody traveled alone back in those days, an entourage. And so they knew that there was a reason. There was something, what was given for ideas and theories and reasons for the star. But They knew something was different because when all of this happened and Jesus was born, both heaven and earth responded to this coming, to this appearance and the arrival of Jesus, okay? And so they all knew that there was something different. That's what was drawing them to this star. So, verse 11. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Okay. So, when they arrived in Bethlehem, where did it say he found them? It says in that verse right there, in the house. They weren't in the stable. By the time they arrived there, we're thinking that Jesus was somewhere between 9 months old and a little over a year. Okay? So they didn't travel because travel was so dadgum rough back during them days. And I think that when you had a baby, wherever you had that baby, you was kind of hung out there for a while until they got big enough and healthy enough to travel. And so Joseph and Mary were still there in Bethlehem. They got out of the stable. They got them a little house there somewhere, and they were kind of setting up family, okay? Now, you know, things were different there. They were in the house. Things were a whole lot quieter than they were when they arrived because that census and all that counting stuff was over, all right? And so they were a little bit more likely and easier to find them because they were just at home at this house, a little family, you know, living life as normal. So, you know, again, it's not what the Christmas card always reflects, but they found the baby not in a barn, the wise men didn't, but they found him in a house. And regardless of when they saw him, they fell down and worshiped him. They worshiped Jesus and presented to him these treasures afar off that they brought, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, I want to tell you something about the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 60, verse number 6. I want to explain this to you. I thought this was cool. The multitude of camels shall cover your land, the dromedaries of Midian and Eph. All those from Sheba will come, and they shall bring gold and incense, and they shall proclaim the praises of the Lord. Now, see, gold and incense. Don't say nothing about myrrh, does it? This is because this is about the second coming of Christ. This is a prophecy on the second coming of Christ. And I want to tell you the difference why they're the deal. So we always hear gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Well, you know, why gold, frankincense, and myrrh? You know, it talks here, this second coming, we got gold, we got frankincense, but why not myrrh? I'm going to tell you why. Because myrrh speaks of death. Myrrh was an anointing oil, a spice, anointing oil, or an anointing spice, you know, for whatever you call when you do to dead people. That's what they were doing. Embalming, yes, it was an embalming deal, like embalming fluid or something is what it was like. So at the second coming of Christ, the only gifts that are going to bring is going to be gold, all right, because gold speaks of the birth, all right. And so he's coming back. He's still the born Jesus, and he's coming back. And frankincense, what frankincense was then and what frankincense will be at the second coming of Christ, it just speaks to the fragrance, the wonderful fragrance. It had to be a really good smelling stuff. It talks about his life being a good life. So that's why you're going to get these three gifts at the birth of Jesus, but at the second coming of Christ, there's only going to be these two, okay? So that's kind of what that looks like. So that's why the gold, frankincense, and the myrrh, because they talked about the whole life and the death of Jesus. So, verse number 12. And then being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. Okay, they had thought Herod to be pretty sincere about this wanting to worship baby Jesus, but we know that he wanted the baby Jesus dead. That was his whole game plan, okay? But God sent one of his angels to warn these wise men in a dream. Did he warn one of them? Did he warn all of them? Don't know, can't tell you that. But he did warn them. He told them to go back home, but go a different route. Go a different way so nobody will be hearing, hey, the wise men are coming back this way. Because Herod, if he sent spies, he had people out looking for him. He wanted to be warned. He wanted to be on top of this deal. So he told them to go a different route. And he gave them a way out. And he even, if you look, he even kind of gave them a route to go and told them kind of the direction to go so they would be out of the reach and the touch and the knowing of Herod. Okay? So they're going back home. They're headed home a different way. So now there's going to be a flight into Egypt. So who's going to be in this flight into Egypt? Well, look at verse 13. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Okay? So now the angel of the Lord, after talking to the wise men, appears to Joseph in a dream. Told him, look, get up, wake up, load up your family, and get your family and head to Egypt. And stay there until I send word for you, okay? It tells him this plain out. Look, King Herod is searching this baby, and the only thing Herod wants for that baby is to destroy him. So y'all get up, go to Egypt, blend in over in Egypt, because I don't think he'd be looking for you over there, okay? Verse number 14. And when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt. See, man, just think how good that turned out for him to do what God told him to do. Just imagine what would happen if we would listen to God and speak that close to God and actually do the stuff he tells us to do. Man, what a miraculous thought, huh? Who'd ever thought such a thing, for us to do what Jesus told us to do? Anyway, they go, and this is a prophecy, even though it's backed up by historical facts. So the son, a person called out of Egypt, the nation. So Joseph, Mary, and Jesus they went to Egypt, as God said, and they stayed there until God told them to come out from there. So let's look at verse 16, right? 15. Yeah. And there was until the death of Herod that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I called my son. Isaiah said that out of Egypt would call his son, that Jesus was going to come out of Egypt. So this quote is actually, it's out of Hosea. It's from the book of Hosea, chapter 11, I think, the first verse. But anyway, it's a prophecy that's backed up by this historical fact. So the son came out from Egypt, right, like God said for him to. Verse number 16. Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, that he was still alive here, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male children who in Bethlehem and all its districts from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Now, from what I can understand, basically, Herod stuck a pin in Bethlehem with a 25-mile radius string on it and drawn a circle around Bethlehem. And pretty much anybody within the circle, 2 years old or younger, got killed, okay? That's how upset he was. That's how mad he was about all of this stuff, okay? So now we're supposing that the shepherds and the wise men didn't arrive at the same time. Shepherds yet probably that night, as we said, wise men a little while later. And remember, the royal family were in a house when they got there, so Herod inquired of the wise men, when they came and stopped the astrologers and all the stuff they were to estimate about how long it was from the time this star appeared, because he wanted to know how old this kid was if he was going to try and do this geneticide on all of these kids, So the wise men went on, returned back to their deal. They didn't go to Herod, and Herod was infumed, man. I'm telling you, this guy went nuts. He went crazy. and decided that he was going to get this baby no matter what, so he was going to put to death, a death sentence, and he actually doubled it. He didn't say any kid a year old. He went to 2. He said any kid 2 years old, he was going to get them because he wanted to get the safety margin to make sure that he got this kid. And so, Herod was a very insecure person because, like I said, he bought his throne. He didn't earn his throne. He bought his throne. Very insecure. And then all of a sudden, all this deal about this new king and about him being in trouble and maybe losing his royal deal, he went insanely crazy, insanely jealous. And so that's where he starts this from 2 years down on this deal. He just went absolutely nuts about it. And then let's look at verses 17 and 18 to kind of do us in. It said, then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, in great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because they are no more. So this Ramah was just barely outside that 25-mile plus or take circumference that Herod put. But you got to imagine even a close town was hearing about all this death and all this horrible stuff that was going on to these little kids, they're around Bethlehem. And so, that lamentation, that weeping, could be heard all the way through Bethlehem, But so Ramah wasn't so far from Bethlehem. And no more than that, it was more of, I'm trying to think, who was it? Yeah, that Hosea and them, that when they were prophesying this stuff, it was like home turf, And so they knew exactly what was going on in the town, how it was affecting that town. And, not in the boundaries of everything that was going on in the slaughter, but the mourning and the weeping and the sadness and all of that was still there. I mean, I just don't want to imagine, and can't even imagine, the hardness and the sadness of the time just because of the insanity and the jealousy of this supposed king. So anyway, that's kind of what happened there. Right here, there's a little split. It's a good place to kind of end this tonight, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of end it here. So you folks online with us, thank y'all for being with us and watching and being in on this as we're in this book of Matthew. But it's a lot of fun being in Matthew, and hope you're getting something out of it. Just y'all come see us and visit with us. Come down here on Wednesday nights and meet us for supper at 6 o'clock. Be glad to feed you. You come by for supper, stay for Bible study, and then we'll have prayer meeting